Now, I think it's fair to say it has been a week to forget for the Haas Formula One team. All kinds of off-track shenanigans, which we won't waste too much time talking about, and then the absolute disaster of their drivers colliding on the opening lap of the British Grand Prix. To talk about what's really going wrong for Haas, I've got Ben Anderson and Scott Mitchell with me. Scott, let's clear the sponsorship saga first. Utter madness going on off-track with Haas and its main title sponsor. Does this sort of thing have any place in F1?
No, it's pretty petty, isn't it? To borrow a line that Ben used when he was speaking to team boss Grosjean after the race. It's just, I stole it because it's much politer than I was going to say, and I'm not sure I can actually say that on our videos. I don't think it has any place at all. From the moment, basically, people were touching down at Silverstone on the Wednesday right through to the end of the race, just embroiled in this needless off-track saga. It makes nobody look good. People just trying to score points, win the internet. Who cares about that battle? I certainly don't want to be victorious among the keyboard warrior elite. So I just think it was a pretty unedifying spectacle from start to finish. And the broad summary would be the title sponsor quite dramatically claiming that they'd terminated the deal, citing poor performance despite Kevin Magnussen qualifying 5th in the Austrian Grand Prix. They must say, yeah, that car sucks, obviously. And then it descending into this claim and counterclaim of who had done what, who needed to do what. So the situation is very murky. The way it is at the moment is that the title sponsor remained on the car and is the team name at Silverstone, and steps will be taken over the next few days. Maybe it'll take a bit longer, a few weeks, to establish whether that deal remains in place, whether it's salvageable, whether it's terminated and Haas gets the money it thinks it's owed. But the issue needs to be solved as quickly as possible, because whether that sponsor can go on to establish itself as a respectable entity within F1, that's not impossible. There are plenty of, shall we say, there have been different kinds of shade company-wise in F1 over the decades, so it's not impossible. But where it is at the moment benefits absolutely nobody.
Yeah, I wonder if there's been a certain degree of naivety on the part of the Haas team. Obviously, they're still a new team in Formula One. This is the first time they've done a big title sponsor deal. There aren't that many sponsors around, as we know, in modern F1 for teams to do deals with, and maybe this can be salvaged, but it is quite an embarrassing situation, as Scott has outlined. Not really the fault of the team, but nevertheless, their reputation is caught up within it because that brand and all their associated parties are plastered all over the car and the team's transporters. I thought it was interesting, in the same weekend, Williams announced an extension of its title sponsorship deal with Rocket, having lost out on the deal that Haas did.
And that's a team that does have problems with performance at the moment, so credit to Rocket for being willing to back them for even longer.
And their product does exist because I've seen it and I have used it.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and a relationship based on a personal relationship between Rocket founder and the team, of course, the guy that worked with them as a tyre engineer back in the day. So I guess it pays to do your due diligence. I'm not saying Haas didn't do that, but the longer this saga drags on, the worse it looks for the team.
Yeah. Let's move on to the more important matters for the team, and that's the performance on track, or the issues on track. And Ben, the British Grand Prix, looking at that weekend briefly in isolation, ended up being defined by contact in the opening few corners between the two drivers, race over effectively from that moment. And I believe you sat down with very furious Gunther Steiner after the race. He can't have been impressed with what he saw from his two drivers at a time when the team just needed to really try and shore things up.
Yeah, absolutely. Gunther Steiner is not backwards about coming forwards with his opinions, but normally he's quite good at internalising anger, keeping it behind closed doors, and then, doing his usual turn in quite humorous comments to the media. But he was much more angry than I've ever seen him after a race. And this is not the first time the drivers have clashed on track. And that's really at the heart of this, accepting all the problems they have with the car's performance, trying to understand how their car interacts with the tyres this year. The two drivers collided at Barcelona after the restart in the Spanish Grand Prix, and Steiner was very clear, had both drivers in front of him, laid down the law. You cannot collide with each other. Yeah, obviously you want to race, but we can't have another collision, so if one of you feels that you're being hard done by and you need to get the position back later, we'll deal with it. But whatever you do, don't clash. And what do they do at Silverstone? They make it to turn 5 and then there's a collision. It wasn't a massive collision, but it was enough in the end with the subsequent damage from the punctures to put both cars out of the race. At a time where Haas really needed a strong race run from both cars. They've been working on setup tweaks, trying to understand why the performance varies so much from qualifying to the race and back again. But they got none of that data. So as Steiner said, all they did was use shovels to dig the hole they're in even deeper. Who
can blame him? They're at a loss now how to deal with this. We saw with the F1 team formerly known as Force India how damaging it can be when your two drivers don't behave, when they can't be trusted to race one another. And I watched the onboards of Grosjean and Magnussen at the start, and it was an accident waiting to happen. They run side by side through the first complex of corners. They both lock up into turn 3, the tight right-hander. They run side by side through the loop at 4, and then they keep side by side through the flat-out kink of 5. It wasn't intentional on either driver's part, but that accident did not happen by coincidence. It's because neither of them was willing to just say, I need to just sort of slot in here. You just need to filter in. Long race. This race is super important for us. Collating data because they've gone slightly weird or an unusual way about going through the car specifications. One's gone back to where the car started the season, and Magnussen's car has the upgrade that they brought in Spain. This was absolutely vital to try and get a handle on what's going on and kick their season on. And they've just sent it into an even bigger spiral of decline, effectively.
Well, that's the key point, isn't it? And the final point we want to touch on is that the team are all at sea about what's going on. There's no question that car, over a single lap, has got pace. We talked about Magnussen being 5th fastest in qualifying in Austria. But on Sundays, it all seems to go to pot. And as you mentioned there, Scott, quite a key test was supposed to take place in this race. Haas don't have that data now from Silverstone. If they want to do that test again, they've got to do it somewhere else. Are they just completely lost at the moment?
Well, I'd say that the troubles that they've had getting the tyres to work properly have been very well documented by this point. But that is not the solution to get them working better, only using 3 of them. It's the worst possible thing that could have happened, because they felt that Austria was the performance, the bottom of the bin, basically, for what they could have done. The race was awful. And they felt encouraged after Friday practice. They felt that maybe they'd got an opportunity here. Grosjean was saying, yeah, we're losing a bit of performance with the not having that Spain upgrade, but actually the feeling in the car's a lot better. So gave them a little bit of a sort of direction. So where's the performance deficits and advantages, because you can back-to-back test it, and how much are you trading off in terms of a better feeling in the car. So that was really encouraging. And to then go into the race and think, right, okay, qualifying could have been better, but we're in a position we could do something here. Let's do the Grand Prix. We've got a full race distance now to see how these different setups affect the tyres, what we can do with it, how it affects us in race trim, which has been their big weakness this year. That should have been a treasure trove of data, because they've got a major new upgrade coming for Germany, and now they've got no information in race trim beyond the limited amount of data that they were able to collate from Friday practice, and they go into this big new upgrade in Germany with no idea whether they put one car on the Germany upgrade. Do they bin off Spain completely, which I think they're probably going to do, and now they back-to-back Australia spec with their spec-free car. Just what a nightmare situation for a team that's so confused. What a nightmare situation to be in.
Yeah, and I worry for the future of that driver lineup as well, because it's that chemistry between the pair that's causing some of these problems. They can't behave themselves on track. They've been told, Steiner said, I can't remind them every race what they need to do. At some point, as he said, you need to take your own decisions. He's made it clear after Barcelona what he expects. They're not delivering. You've got Grosjean crashing at the exit of the pit lane on the first lap of FP1. The atmosphere within the team and between the two drivers can't be good, and that needs to be sorted urgently. Otherwise, the team's just going to remain in big trouble.
Haas said after Austria that what happened there in the race, the performance-wise, was their worst in terms of pure performance of the team's short history. I think little did Gunter know what was in store when they got to Silverstone, on track, off track. Now, obviously, the team's only been around for a few years, but it's been on a constant upward trajectory since then. And the last 7 or so days have made it firmly the worst week in the team's history.